You're listening to Horsemanship, Growth, and Gratitude with Miranda and Horsemanship, where we discuss training wins and fails, mindset, personal growth, and everything in between. So grab your favorite cup of coffee or reins and let's ride. Hey there, it's Miranda Allen, and welcome back to Horsemanship, Growth, and Gratitude. Today's episode is a real, honest conversation that I think needs to be had more often. I want to talk about something our industry desperately needs more of: cowgirls supporting cowgirls. Not competing, not comparing, and definitely not gatekeeping, but supporting. Because here's the truth: horses are already hard enough. Life is already heavy enough. And somewhere along the way, parts of the horse world have made it even harder than it needs to be. There's a culture that we've normalized. Let's just say this quiet part out loud. Our industry can be brutal. If you don't ride a certain way, if you don't use the right tack, if you don't wear certain name brands, if you didn't grow up doing this, if you ask the wrong questions, if your horse isn't trained enough, broke enough, or heaven forbid not expensive enough, then you're just not good enough. There's this unspoken pressure to already know, and if you don't, well then, good luck. I don't know if it's fueled by jealousy, lack of self-confidence, insecurity, or someone else's need to feel superior. Probably a combination of it all. And I have seen this in every discipline. But this gatekeeping is ridiculous, and awareness about it needs to be brought to light. That culture doesn't protect horses. It doesn't preserve tradition, and it definitely doesn't build confident, capable horsemen and horsewomen. It just creates fear, shame, and silence. And I see it all the time with friends, clients, acquaintances, and I've even experienced it myself, but especially in women. Talented, thoughtful riders second-guessing themselves because they're too afraid to ask for help. Newcomers feeling like they don't belong. Women tearing themselves down before anyone else can. That is not strength. That is survival. And I don't think that's the Western way of life we claim to love so much. Cowgirls supporting cowgirls isn't soft. It is as strong as you can be. Somewhere along the way, encouragement got labeled as weakness. But let me be clear. Supporting others, especially women supporting other women, doesn't make you less skilled. Teaching doesn't cheapen your knowledge. Helping somebody else doesn't take away anything from you. In fact, it proves that you're confident and competent. Because when you are secure in your own self-worth, in your own horsemanship, you don't feel threatened by somebody else learning. This is a huge reason why it's so important to keep pushing yourself outside of your own comfort zone, putting yourself in the shoes of being a newbie to grow and to try something new. Because it's so much easier to remember what it felt like to be new. So much easier to remember what it felt like to make beginning mistakes and to remember what true fear of the unknown feels like. And instead of saying, well, go figure it out, you can say, hey, I've been there. Let me help. That's leadership. That's horsemanship. That is cowgirl grit. Here's something I love to say loud and proud. I do not care what discipline my friends ride. If I were to only be friends with people who rode exactly like me, rode the same discipline, trained the same way, thought the same thoughts, I wouldn't have very many friends. And honestly, I wouldn't be half the horseman that I am today. Some of the best lessons I've learned came from people who rode completely differently than I do. People who challenged my perspective. People who made me think instead of just defend. Barrel racers, ranch riders, dressage riders, trail riders, reiners, pleasure riders. I am proud to be friends with them all, and I have learned something from them all. And horses, they don't care what label we put on ourselves. They just care about clarity, timing, respect, and feel. We'd all be better off if we spent less time arguing about how somebody rides or what clothes they wear and spent more time focusing on how can we support them with their goals. Now let's also talk about the Yellowstone effect for a second. Because whether people want to admit it or not, the TV show Yellowstone was huge for our industry. It brought people in, it sparked curiosity, and it made the Western culture visible and cool again. And instead of seeing that as a threat and making fun of outsiders who were buying the wrong pair of cowboy boots or misshaped cowboy hats because they didn't know any better, we should have seen this as an opportunity. An opportunity for new people falling in love with horses, new families wanting to learn, new riders dreaming about a lifestyle that they didn't grow up around and didn't know existed, and new homes for good horses. That is not a bad thing. That's how traditions survive. Now, I personally loved watching both Taylor Sheridan's Yellowstone and Landman. And you know what I saw? All things Yellowstone merch flying off the shelf. Horse prices increasing, horse shows growing in popularity, and cowboys being cool again. Heck, I even personally owned Yellowstone socks, bought the coffee, and baked beans. But you know what I don't see? MTech's merch being sold. And Landman is just as great of a show. But because cowboys and the Western way of life are cool, not rich businessmen. But here's where we're failing the newcomers. We get annoyed when they don't know things. We judge their questions. And sadly, we roll our eyes at their excitement. You can't be mad at the newcomers for not knowing proper horsemanship if nobody is willing to teach them. Or worse, get mad when somebody else takes their money because they saw the opportunity that you were, quite frankly, too good for. You don't get to gatekeep knowledge and then complain when the horses in the industry suffer from a lack of education. That is on us. I remember when I started high school rodeo, I had been riding for years and barrel racing for a couple, but my horses weren't the most competitive. I didn't have name brand gear. I wore a helmet instead of a cowboy hat, and I had a 2-horse rusted out bumper pole instead of a giant rig. I also didn't come from a rodeo family. I will never forget how stuck up some of the kids and even adults were when I was running around trying to figure out where to go, what to do, and how things worked at the first couple rodeos. Now, college was a little better because I could say that I had a few years of rodeo under my belt, even if it was only part-time, but they didn't know that. I was already seasoned, so I was in. But there was still plenty of gatekeeping. I even missed signing up for my first college rodeo at Cody, Wyoming, because I couldn't find any information on how to get signed up for the rodeo team. Those memories still sting and definitely piss me off. What was supposed to be one of the best days of my life competing in my first rodeos left with a bad taste in my mouth. I never want anyone to feel that way because of something that I say or do intentionally. I also remember the culture shock that I experienced when I started working for professional rein cow horse trainers. They were all so warm, open, welcome, and genuinely supportive. And I knew right then and there that that was the type of environment that I wanted to create, that I wanted to be known for. One where people could ask questions, learn, and feel welcome, not judged, no matter their background or experience. Let me say this clearly. Again, gatekeeping does not protect horses in the Western way of life. Education does. When people are afraid to ask questions, they guess. When they're embarrassed to admit that they don't know, they fake confidence. And when they don't have access to good mentorship, they learn from whatever loud opinion happens to be online. That's how horses get confused, that's how trust breaks down, and that's how people get hurt. A supportive, open culture creates better horsemen. A judgmental one creates resentment. If you truly love horses, teaching and encouraging others should feel like a part of the responsibility that comes with it. You can still do it too with healthy boundaries. We need to normalize asking for help. Not as a last resort, not after something goes wrong, but as just a part of the learning process. No one is meant to do this alone. Not horses, not riders. Confidence doesn't come from pretending that you know everything. It comes from being willing to say, I don't know, can you show me? And on the flip side, we need to normalize giving help when we can. You don't have to have all the answers, and you don't even need to be a professional. Sometimes help can look like sharing a resource, encouraging a question, saying, you're not crazy, this part is hard, just keep going, you got it. That goes a long way. What Cowgirls Supporting Cowgirls looks like to me, it doesn't mean that we never disagree, it doesn't mean that we lower standards, and it doesn't mean unsafe behavior gets a pass. It means correcting with kindness, teaching without ego, encouraging curiosity, and making space for growth. It means remembering that every confident horseman and horsewoman was once brand new and was once a beginner, and somebody helped them. So here's my challenge to you. Be the cowgirl you wish you had had to learn from. If you know something, share it. If you see somebody struggling, encourage them. If you're the one struggling, just ask. Because the future of our industry doesn't depend on perfection. It depends on connection and cowgirls supporting cowgirls. That's how we keep the love of the horse alive. So please stay curious, stay kind, and keep showing up for your horse and for each other. Thanks for tuning in to Horsemanship, Growth, and Gratitude with Miranda and Horsemanship. If you've enjoyed this episode, I'd love for you to follow the podcast, leave a review, and share it with a friend who loves horses as much as we do. And while you're at it, be sure to check out my website, mirandaallyn.net. That's Allyn, Allyn, to stay updated on the launch of my upcoming online course, Essentials of Horsemanship. And until next time, remember, horsemanship is in the details.